Thanks for joining us, Jacek. I should say PMI is a sponsor of this event, but this is an editorial interview, and so which you have chosen to be given a hard time.
I may regret it.
Yes, you may regret it. You can tell me after.
Too late.
And I should tell you, given that it's now day 3 of this event, it seems to be powered slightly by Zins. A lot of the folks putting this thing on have been.
Well, thank you.
Have been relying on them. So your shares are, I think, maybe the best performing stock of the Fortune 50 this year. Obviously, been a bit of a tough year in the equity markets. Does that just reflect like a sort of traditional flight to high dividend stocks at a bad moment? Is it because nicotine is recession proof? Or do you think that I think a lot of your career has been about a push to have the markets and have society view nicotine not as a lethal pariah stock, but as a normal, a normal consumer company. So how do you explain it?
Yeah, I think, there are a number of factors, right, which always impacts the stock, the share price. But I think that the market investors are fully on our side when it comes to what we call internally the transformation, which is, we know that the cigarettes cause the problems, quite the significant health problems. The question is the people using the cigarettes, despite the fact that, they know what are the risks associated with smoking. Many will tell you because the cigarettes and nicotine is addictive. Okay, very fair, but what is then addiction? And this is what, many years ago happened at Philip Morris, that without understanding and addiction, you cannot actually help people. You cannot unwind them from the habit. And the question is that if you define the addiction as the repetitive use of a product or some repetitive behavior, etc., you need to understand what is the benefit, perceived or real benefit. And this drives you, in our case, to the role of nicotine. Yes, on the one hand, we call it is an addictive substance, no questions about it, but what is the benefit with the consumers deriving from nicotine? And there is a well-established science, not just the Philip Morris science, about the impact of nicotine on the certain cognitive skills. Actually, the same skills which later on, over age, etc., are fading out. You have Alzheimer, you have Parkinson, and so on. So that's from a pharmacological perspective, the role of nicotine helps you with, controlling your attention, focus, time to react. When you go historically, which of the groups in a societies were using smoking cigarettes more than others? One of the group, for example, were truck drivers. Interpretation was the blue collar, low income. This is what they're doing, but you put yourself in the shoes of the truck driver, you exactly understand what is the story about the focus, span of attentions, that sort of the things. So we built this new building, the new company. So we are Philip Morris, obviously known for the Marlboro, many other great cigarette trademarks, and we're actually leaving the industry. And I think when we unfolded that story to investors, and I remember it was at the time when I was still a CFO, and you have to do the work all the shows and demonstrate your stories for many investors was why you breaking a toy of a well-performing cigarette business. I said you cannot build a great business on a product which has a problem. But we can build a fabulous business if you unwind the problem of the product and go somewhere else. So I think the stock price, the valuations, you could see the valuation of us versus our former peers from a cigarette industry. When a classical tobacco cigarettes are valued at, at a given moment, 8 to 10 times multiple, we are valued well above 20. So actually, Philip Morris is leaving one industry. It's not that we're transforming industry. We're leaving one industry and going to the completely new industry. Just one thing to conclude. If nicotine would have been discovered today, which is naturally occurring substance, and you wouldn't have a history of the cigarettes or tobacco, and unfortunately we have it, nicotine would end up in the supplement shelves in the supermarkets. And now we have to go and start focusing on, on the nicotine and what that sort of the, territories offers as opportunity to PMI and to others.
It's a really weird, interesting corporate story that in 2007, you guys split from Altria, took the international market, and are now back in this market you can't sell cigarettes in this market, but you're back in this market competing with your old parent company. Who's better positioned, do you think, to win that nicotine market?
Yeah, so obviously, I know Altria, okay, it was our former brother or parent in the previous construct, but Altria is in a different industry. This is what I'm trying to say. We're leaving the cigarette industry and are going in a different direction.
So that sounds like a difficult situation for them.
Yeah, well, look, everyone has to go and do their own strategies, okay? I mean, the fundamental principle, and I think this was a turning point at the Philip Morris International many, many years ago, is when we said, why not, the question is what people are using. Is it cigarettes, is it another product? It's why people are using this product. Where is the satisfactions? One day will tell you that the first puff in the morning is helping them with something. If you don't understand the why, you cannot unwind the whole situation. I know now obviously it's always easier to describe what has happened in the past from today's perspective, but this is what it is. Just because we've been going after why historically, and we put the money behind this whole thing, yes, we have a first mover advantage, no question about it. But the first mover advantage is not about the $14+ billion which we have spent to date behind all of this transformation, but it is a mindset of the people in PMI, which we're still in some places in the world, I mean, many places in the world, selling cigarettes for the very, I have to say, almost idiotic type of the reasons, where there are certain governments in certain parts of the world that they will ban alternative to cigarettes, but they continue allowing sales of cigarettes. So there's absence of other language, I call it idiotic, because this is counter what everyone wanted to achieve. So the difference between us and some other companies in the cigarette space is that, we have a massive R&D center, right? 400+ scientists, etc. We have changed a lot of, more than a half of my management team are the people who had nothing to do with the cigarette. So we didn't have to deal with the legacy in a sense, because by changing the team, by changing the management team and below, we actually injected completely different knowledge, different views on how we're going to go after consumers, regulations, etc. So we built this powerhouse, which now is yielding the results.
I mean, you're here right now in 2025 Washington, where every industry is trying to figure out what these new regulators want. And I think there's sort of pulls in both directions right now around HHS. There's this sort of make America healthier, ban chemicals of all sorts in all sorts of different ways. And there's also a really strong deregulatory impulse. What do you see happening? As you talk to people here in Washington, which direction is this thing going for you?
Yeah, so on a lighter note, I mean, definitely we're living at these times that you better have a good cognitive skills. Because there is a lot of data points and impulses to analyze in a short period of time. But more seriously, it's obviously when you're coming with innovative products which never exist before, etc., we always have a tendency of using the past regulations to solve the potential problems or whatever, regulate the new product. So we see this, how FDA was struggling with really authorizations of these new products, etc. And I mean, we see this in other markets. I gave examples. You have a massive geographies like Turkey, India, Vietnam, and many others who are saying cigarettes are okay, alternative to cigarettes is not okay, but we want to eliminate smoking. I say, how the heck you gonna eliminate the smoking if you don't give people alternative?
But here in the U.S., what are you saying?
U.S. is, Zins has an authorization, right, which is received a few months ago, so that's okay. I mean, I think that FDA has not today create a proper alternative market to cigarettes. So there is a part of a strategy of FDA which works, which is on the cigarette side, but there is a part of the FDA strategy, which frankly speaking today, it is the failure in a sense that yes, you have a demand. There's a massive number of the adult smokers in US and other places who are demanding a better alternatives and are not willing to quit. And we know that these products exist. We know that the science is supporting this product. So you almost go to the situation of, it's almost immoral that you don't give a people chance to go and resolve the problem of cigarette smoking. I think a task of FDA by statute was to create this market based on the science, and the science I think is very clear, but they have somehow failed today to do it. So
Have you talked to RFK Jr. about it?
Not yet.
You did Zin in this very interesting way got sucked a couple of years ago into our polarized politics because for whatever reason it became a sort of MAGA coded thing. Tucker Carlson was very into Zins and did a video where they like airlifted a giant Zin box on top of him. It's worth watching. Was that, and I always wonder, was that a positive for you because it opened, new sort of passionate market, or is that scary because it's so polarizing? How did you?
I think
navigate that?
positive on the side that people talk about this because they realize that the product helps them. Okay, so it's not something which is pulled or pushed or paid, etc. This is a natural conversations that the moment when anybody remembers Senator Schumer about a year ago, etc., make some statements about what he thinks should happen to Zin, and essentially indicated that the Zin should be eliminated, the ban, and people on the social media, the real people, real users for which Zin has helped, former smokers, have reacted.
Yeah.
So I would treat it as the positive. I mean, we shouldn't be afraid about the conversations, right? I mean, it's a conversation. It's our role to instead of shutting down the conversation, is to carry on the conversation, explain your point of views, and I think you can reconcile and resolve a lot of problems.
So Tucker Carlson went, though, from being your main spokesman in America to starting a rival product of his own to compete against. How's that going?
I've never met him, okay? So I always refrained of forming an opinion about the people I've never met, okay? I have read a lot. I've seen him on a...
But this new product of his, has it made a dent? Is it is it a real competitor?
No. Well, I mean, everyone can be competitor. I don't think the product is kind of meaningful sort of a presence or sales, but it's not the better. I would love to meet the person one day, okay? Then we could, maybe
I'll connect you.
Thank you.
He, at least for a minute, was genuinely the biggest fan. I'm sure he'd love to. Another sort of U.S. historic policy there in 1997, at I think the peak of the real sort of sense that this was a pariah industry, Lloyd Doggett pushed through an amendment that bars the U.S. from doing the kind of trade promotion of nicotine products that it does routinely with other American exports. And I wonder if you've talked to the Trump administration or the Congress, or if you hope that they would, because I think a lot of your focus right now is trying to push other markets into letting you shift from cigarettes to e-cigarettes or to Zins or whatever. And I wonder, is there a role for the U.S. government in that? Have you talked to them about that?
Yeah, so that's actually an excellent question. Thank you. So Doggett Amendment was about U.S. diplomacy, U.S. agency, etc., not helping tobacco or cigarette companies at the time to promote their products. Yeah. That was, we can discuss, it makes sense, doesn't make sense, but this was the idea behind this regulations of this law. How this over a period of time has been interpreted that, Philip Morris International, it represents American company paying taxes here, listed on a stock exchange, American asset, which obviously has the massive operations abroad and requires the same protections by the U.S. diplomacy abroad as any other U.S. assets. And this, by many administrations, has been or people executing the right, have been over-interpreted that we cannot help Philip Morris. So, from time to time, we end up in trade disputes, tax disputes, like many other, businesses operating on the international arena. And, I don't think it should be like that the U.S. administrations will say, I cannot help you because you're a tobacco business. So we're not talking about the product, we're talking about the principles.
Have you found any support here?
No, but I think we will talk with the administration, but I think administration also we're trying to show a little bit of empathy. I think a list of the problems which President Trump has put on the table is pretty heavy weight. And maybe we help the administrations to resolve the big ticket items first before we go and bother them with some other items. But I think it has to be resolved, and it feeds into the new line of administration that why you have a government, why you have a diplomacy, why you're spending the taxpayers' money. Are they doing your job? as their role has been defined or not. I mean, that's the pretty, very logical question.
And as somebody just operating a big global business, although one that obviously has sort of a history of being a bit recession-proof, what are you seeing? Are you seeing signs that consumption is starting to slow, or that, I don't know, just what are you seeing in those markets?
If we define, if our strategy is based on helping smokers to unwind smoking, leave cigarettes behind, etc., hence this whole array of the, heated tobacco products, e-vape, pouches like Zins, etc. I mean, we have a massive demand in front of us. There is more than 1 billion smokers in the world, so including obviously US. So we don't have a problem in a sense that the demand is disappearing. There's actually demand and it's growing with the popularity, awareness, etc. There is more and more smokers who try to convert to this product. So on that side, I think we're in a good space. From a tariff space, which is a very hot topic, I mean, historically, we always had been the supply chain was designed by block of countries. So Europe was almost self-sufficient, US is self-sufficient, etc. So, frankly speaking, the impact of the tariffs as they are today, or what I hear, is not really something which would bother us at this.
Would you worry that smokers will, as in a sort of straitened economic situation, if they're low on cash, that they'll be less likely to buy, a more expensive e-cigarette?
Yeah, the smoking is a little bit like coffee and a few other stimulants which we're all using, okay? And this is one of these relatively not expensive pleasure people have in their life. We should look at the smokers from a more positive perspective than a negative perspective. They're the same humans as the non-smokers. Some people have this habit, some people have other habits. If we find the solutions of how to help this group of people, I mean, we should help. So the fact that we're trying to go out of cigarettes, I am not changing my opinion that, smokers, they take a pleasure from smoking cigarettes. And our job is, can I deliver this pleasure in a way which completely changes the risk profile to the user? And that's the whole thing. But don't take away pleasure from people. This is a very bad idea. Very bad idea.
That's a good rule to live by. Well, I enjoyed seeing the way that you yourself consume Zins, which is that you mix a bunch of different flavors in the same box and surprise yourself. So.
Yes, but in addition, despite the fact that as a CEO, especially these days, the life is full of surprises. And every time I take a pouch, I don't know which pouch I took because I mixed them in a pack. So remember the Forrest Gump magic.
That's incredibly chaotic. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.